late packages, lost packages, delayed packages, and even packages delivered to the wrong address. Just a few of the many frustrations that continue to grow among the rapidly evolving industry of last mile delivery. How can last mile operators put some of these frustrations behind them? That and so much more on this brand new episode of Delivering the Goods.
Welcome and thank you for joining me today. My name is Gary Newbury. I'm a senior executive on call helping businesses in the make, move, sell flow of consumer goods and services. My purpose is to inspire business leaders, particularly those within the consumer products and retailing space, to think big, be bold, scale, adapt and win, one epic supply chain transformation at a time. There's additional content available through my website, RetailAID.ca, or on my YouTube channel, RetailAID. Be sure to check it out. As the business world faces much volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity, organizations need to be tapping into resources with an inside edge on transitioning their teams to be agile, innovative, and digital, with thought leaders, experts, and senior executives who have mastery of operational turnarounds and strategic transformations to help reorientate their enterprises. There's great material to get through here, so let's get started.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to a brand new episode of Delivering the Goods, a podcast dedicated to the logistics and last mile industry. My name is Marc Babin, your host. So excited to have all of you join me for this great talk. And it is a great talk, and I'm so happy that you're joining us. You're going to want to stick around for the full thing. So on this pod, we will be opening the lid on the growing frustrations faced within last mile delivery process, and more importantly, how operators can minimize these frustrations and stand above the rest as a preferred last mile operator, the goal for every logistics company. Now, there are many complexities in this talk, lots of barriers to maneuver around. So of course we need an expert who knows the industry inside and out. And we have gone and done just that. He's a Rethink Retail Top 100 influencer, a fellow podcaster, keynote speaker, and a globally recognized thought leader. Please welcome to the podcast, Gary Newbury. Gary, thank you so much for joining us today. Very excited to have you. It's an honor to have you here with us. And more importantly, I'm looking forward to this discussion. We've had some pre-discussions on this, and it's a fantastic topic. Can't wait to get your insights on a lot of these talks today. So again, thanks for being with us today.
Delighted to be here and to share some thoughts, and some of them may be a little bit contrarian to the established way of thinking about the whole area of retail supply chains, and particularly the last mile. So looking forward to getting stuck in and sharing some of those views, and to see how they land with your audience.
Absolutely. Let's stir that pot. Looking forward to your talk. I'm looking forward to this one. So let's kick things off, and let's begin the discussion by addressing, of course, that not so secret frustrations that we all deal with when it comes to last mile delivery. If any of us have had a package delivered in the last 2 years, you know what we're talking about. So on that point, do you feel like the majority of these common frustrations, many of which I've just mentioned in the opening, but a lot we know about personally, is that a result of this last 2 years in the pandemic, the exponential growth that we've seen and just putting pressure on operators? Is that literally them just trying to keep up? Or is there more that could have been done by them and to reduce these frustrations by now?
You've hit the nail on its head. I think there are three things that are important to think about at this point. The first one is that acceleration, that the sheer switch of volumes of the categories that people were buying from. Prior to the pandemic, they were doing outside the home category spending, clothes for the office, restaurants and eating out, that kind of thing. All of a sudden, during the lockdown and restrictions, people became much more focused on the home. That meant a massive swing in category spending. And also, the government was often tipping money at people at a fast rate of knots. The US often gave big checks to people. They wanted to spend that money as a windfall.
Yeah, immediately.
And the third thing the most important thing here is, as regards last mile, is the switch of channels from store spending to doing it all online. And guess what? These became our favourite friends.
Didn't they just?
If we hadn't used them before, we found out how to use them. And sometimes we stumbled across Amazon, sometimes we stumbled across our favourite brands, but nonetheless, we were using that at a rate of knots. And that acceleration was of trends that already existed. And here in Canada, we were somewhat behind the eight ball, as they say. But suddenly we went from a representation of about 2 to 3% of e-commerce across the whole of retail to something in the order of about 15. So that's a massive shift. So that's the first one, the acceleration. The second one is when I speak about North America, and particularly parochially about Canada, we have a very risk-averse nature to investments. We need to know the ROI of everything before we make an investment.
Yes.
So it's like when you're in this world of, you have an overall strategy of where you want to get to, where you want to take as a retailer, where you want to take your business to, and you're surrounded by lots of executives and middle managers going, well, I've got to take this to my boss. I've got to have the ROI. I've got to know exactly how it's all going to work out. It's got to be perfect. And we're in this world of, we're breaking new barriers. We can look at other countries like the UK, Germany, Austria, China. We can go to and sort of get a sense of where this world is going. But still, we've got budgets and ROIs and capital expenditure and plans and all that kind of stuff that stop us from moving forward. And if we think about the way that PEs and venture capital have been investing and companies have been investing, I think we've got very risk-averse nature to areas of development around the supply chain and particularly the last mile. And the third element, which, say if that was all perfect, say if we knew the acceleration was there and we knew this was going to happen, and we'd made the investments, I just think we lack imagination to scale. So we're very we're doing the GTA, which is Greater Toronto. We'll just do the GTA because it's the biggest population sector in Canada. And for people who don't know too much about Canada, we've got about 6 or 7 major conurbations and a huge amount of white space between them. I could be on a plane going from Toronto to Vancouver for 5 solid hours, be in the same country, and there's a lot of that white space, and somebody's got to bridge that gap between, I'm in Toronto, I want to buy something from Vancouver, and I want it tomorrow. And it's stocked in Vancouver. It's a challenging situation. It's not the UK where I came from. Normally about 4 hours traveling from pretty much anywhere. So if you were centrally based, you could reach most places, certainly on the same day. So there are 3 things that I think that have somewhat slowed down the ability to execute well as this volume increased, as this opportunity increased. Normally we would say that if our sales were increasing, we'd pat ourselves on the back and say, this is great stuff. It was our budget and we're doing better than the budget. Let's all go on this. But I think for many people, it was like, oh my goodness, what's going on? We're not capable of doing this. Let's run around. Let's do the headless chicken thing and try and make something good out of this. And as a result of that, it's inflicted lots of friction into a process of the online buying experience that should really be quite friction-free.
Yeah, it's certainly the platform for a seamless transition. I mean, as a consumer, we don't see any of the mess going on behind the scenes. We just click buy and expect it to come. It's a simple process. But yeah, you're right in the fact that there's so much going on behind the scenes that the average consumer doesn't even think about. Do you feel like because of these 3 elements you mentioned, it's just Band-Aid over Band-Aid over Band-Aid right now? There's no ripping it all off and let's just address the situation. It's just fix.
Yeah, it's very incremental. There's no big thinking here. There's no being bold, big thinking going on. It's just like, oh, what are they doing? Oh, what's that new demand pattern today? Oh, we need to react to that. How are we going to do that? Oh, let's just run around a bit harder. So it's more of, I typify this as whatever we were doing in 2019, just do more of it. Get through it, throw a bit more labor at the problem, or, run a few extra trucks, get some hired trucks, just put drivers in them, just get on with it. Not to actually stand back and go, where is our business going? All right, we've picked up this trend. We've got to take a view. Is it going to continue? Is it going to accelerate? Or is it just going to plateau off? Whatever it is, and what capabilities and capacities do we need to build now to make sure that we're ahead of that curve? And maybe we may not be of the size of Amazon, and with the huge amount of capital expenditure they've got available to themselves, but we can actually create trends in our marketplace. But the first thing we need to do is flatten out that friction and do a good job of executing our strategy if we have one.
Yeah, back to step 1 almost before we jump to step 10. And so obviously there's a lot of frustrations and there's a lot of limitations, like you're saying, whether it's the lack of innovation or just this Band-Aid over Band-Aid problems. And there are, in the last few years especially, been an amazing amount of solutions come to market, whether it's products that are software, hardware, anything under the sun has really come to retailers, to logistics, to last mile operators. I think that's part of the problem is, again, there's too many things going on and it's just oversaturating an already oversaturated problem. Is there an area that last mile operators should be focusing their attention on and really ignore the noise on either side of and just narrow in on one area right now that you feel would benefit them the most in the coming years?
Firstly, I think experimentation is great. We need to figure out how, if we have a strategy, let's assume we have one, but and we may not be executing it too brilliantly, but to experiment with different ideas, little drones. Amazon 6 or 7 years ago, maybe longer, came out, we're going to do drones. So everyone thought, we need to do drones. Right, off we go. Not, hey, that's an interesting, let's get a drone and to see what happens, see if we can break it down and decompose that way of approaching the marketplace. But it seems to be that a technology comes up, whether it's a shared user platforms like a gig economy platform like Instacart or these little mobile autonomous vehicles that run around places like Milton Keynes between certain hours. We all want to kind of jump to that's the solution because we're only thinking about today. That work, right? Grab that, let's do it. Rather than let's just try and exploit what might it look like? Just buy one and try it out. I don't think there's enough attention paid to experimentation. But I think in the wider picture, we need to start working on what the real solutions look like. And that solution may be beyond process systems, infrastructure, even culture and KPIs. It's much more about how do we interact within our ecosystem? How do we collaborate with people that we used to think or have currently thought of as our competitors? And one of my big bugbears for such a long time has been, who is actually going to provide that national platform for small package deliveries? Is it going to be an individual effort by FedEx, UPS, DHL, and all the local players we've got, including a state-sponsored organisation like Canada Post and Purolator, versus Amazon at one extreme? Or do we somehow find a way of collaborating, which means sharing those resources so that we maybe pick up collection from a range of retailers in one area and disperse those into areas and only have one carrier that delivers into local neighborhoods. And I think we're a long way away from that, but I keep having to remind people that if I'm buying on FedEx and it's coming to my doorstep, as I look out my window, I see, the DHL van, the UPS van, the Purolator, the Go Logistics for Amazon and the other white vans all coming down my very leafy boulevard. That is a great opportunity. That's a big risk competitively. We have to be in these neighborhoods to make deliveries. But in fact, it's a great opportunity to start those conversations, say, how can we work together? Because the customer will benefit if we're able to offer a much more reliable service, much more cost effectively. It benefits the consumer, benefits the retailers. And I just think we're so far away from that conversation, but we need to get to it pretty fast.
Yeah, and start at least exploring it. And like you said, maybe we are a bit further away because the incentive for them, that hasn't even been worked out as far as I know. Like there's so many complexities in that part alone, but maybe they should start looking at it, and your thoughts on this as well, but start looking at it solely or primarily as a customer experience point of view now that it's an oversaturated market?
Yeah, I'm a regular shop on Amazon, and I don't actually see the driver because it's all contactless. And I get to find out when I check on my tracking screen that they've actually delivered it with a nice photograph. So, I kind of know it's there. So at one level, unless you're going across the threshold, so you deliver it inside the home as opposed to the porch, I used to think it really mattered that the truck turned up with livery, from Sears, from wherever it might be, and the driver was carefully liveried and had the Sears paperwork, and you had a Sears experience. And I think that may apply in the luxury end of the market, but when it's general merchandise, and the fact that we're doing it contactless, it really doesn't matter who does it.
Yeah, you don't see the guy show up.
Is my experience of the process by which I place my order and I get updated until the point that it's delivered to my porch, and how that works. I think that for me is a missing piece. Amazon do a reasonable job of that, but I still have to check on my track package or whatever the thing is to find out, it's delivered. So don't ring my bell.
That real-time transparency. I love that.
So I think that organizations, retailers, other businesses supplying consumers need to they need to really think about it from a consumer point of view. If I'm not going to ring the bell to tell you it's there, how am I going to give you visibility? And if it's something valuable, how do I reduce my risk of porch piracy? By making sure that I'm giving the customer every opportunity to know it's on its way between these windows. And as I approach the area, it becomes much more refined, so that it might be between 1 and 2 when we start the day, and by the time I get there, it's at 1:31 because I've delivered it.
That's something you had brought up in previous conversations, and it's one that I've reflected on more and more since, because when I think about it, to know where my package is at all times and to have that complete transparency to that real-time operation, even to the pictures, there's a few that do it really well with here's where the truck is at real times, because that's technology that's out there. It doesn't have to be expensive, off-the-shelf solutions that can do that, of course. But as a consumer, I get the confidence that I know where it is going to be at what time, because guess what? I'm not sitting by the door 24 hours a day waiting for you to get there. I'm at work, at the shops, wherever. I'd love to be at the shop, say my package is going to be there. It looks like 2 hours. I know I can plan to be there at that time. So as a consumer, that's vital. And a delivery person that can do that would influence where I shop. Because if I had that as a last mile operator, say shop XYZ uses this delivery company, and I know they provide that service, I'm incentivized to use them. So I can see it being vitally important. From your perspective, though, on the logistics side and on the operations side, obviously for a consumer, that's great. From a logistics provider, is that just another sort of long tunnel for them to go down? Or is it a distraction, or is that, do you think, the way forward right now?
I think it's a way forward. And not only do I want much higher levels of visibility and notifications, because I don't sit here, just as you were describing, I don't sit there in my hall waiting for this thing to turn up, nor do I sit on my desktop waiting for, am I getting a notification? I want it very proactive. So sure about the actual traveling route of the vehicle. I'm not that bothered about that. And I'm sure that for those who are criminally minded would find that information very helpful for their little escapades of porch piracy. But I do want to be engaged in that delivery. And I also want some options, because to the example you gave me, I'm somewhere else. They told me it would be between 1 and 2, but I've been distracted. I've had to pop to somewhere for an urgent thing. And I want to, in the last few moments, be able to tell the driver through the app to put it somewhere else, to give it to a neighbor, or to bring it to me somewhere else. It would be almost a frictionless experience to have all that level of visibility, but it would now add value if I could actually displace this delivery to a different location. And there may be some limits. It must be, along your road, not somewhere that takes the driver off route. But I want many more options, because my life is, many lives are complicated, and you would get distracted by other things going on. And the other thing is, not only am I impressed by I place the order and it could be here the same day, but maybe I place the order and I want to define when I want to receive it in terms of which day. I mean, Amazon, you have this 1 day, 2 day thing, and it can be very annoying that, tomorrow I'm away. I'm going to be away all day, and I don't want them delivering something which is going to be on my porch all day. I want it the next day, and their systems do work. They release their product to the network to distribute. They can just delay it by a day. And sometimes if you're having multiple orders coming from different places, you can say, do you want it this day, that day, or all together on that day? And it gives the impression that they're consolidating it, which is far from the truth. But they haven't been very good at executing, and I'm not picking out Amazon, but I tend to shop mostly on Amazon. They haven't been very good at consolidating that as a delivery. What they've done is delivered on a Tuesday and a Wednesday and a Thursday, even though I selected, let's do it on the Thursday because I don't need it that desperately until the latest possible time. So I want more flexibility in my options of when I receive the goods. Speed is not the only criteria. For some things it is, and it's a driver of these people who think that 2-hour service is what the customer wants. Like the solutions of Instacart and Uber Eats and things like that, DoorDash, are all sort of geared up to being able to rush it to your door. Well, that's fine if it rushes to your door. You bring it in and put it in your haul for the next 2 days before you get to it. Well, there's been a lot of energy sort of burnt on that to just to tick a box. And I think that as we increasingly get more and more conscious of the impact on our environment, I think more and more people will start to say, look, I have the need now in terms of the development of that need, but I'm quite happy to receive it at the weekend, as long as you do it reliably and you keep me informed as to, how you're doing that.
Yeah, that's the biggest part of, I think, that whole part is the engagement factor. And I think that's where the big gap is right now, because you're right, there are solutions, but you have to go on there and select it. And it's that big of a pain. What's my account, blah, blah, blah. If there was an opportunity to engage with the delivery and say, I'm not here, maybe drop it off at the pickup station or 1 hour later, or some type of engagement with it in real time. And I guess, and your thoughts on this just quickly, but maybe that's where looking at more agile solutions, all-in-one type systems, is where that can begin, because you're not talking about needing all this new hardware or software. It can be, say, from a mobile device, on their smartphone or something like this, something that just integrates in to have that engagement experience.
Yeah, there are, I remember, I think it was last year that somebody came out and said that we can get it to you in 15 minutes. Wherever you are broadly in this area. So people were saying, oh, I fancy having an ice cream, sort of trivial example, I fancy having an ice cream. I'm in Central Park by this location. And they would use the GPS coordinates of your phone to send that to the courier to actually meet you, which wasn't a residential address. So there's bits of the puzzle arriving.
Yep.
But it's not necessarily being brought together. So you've got these massive, highly intellectual bits of tech, people writing code, theorizing about how this is all going to fit together. But we're only seeing one just as retailers are tending to operate on a day-to-day tactical basis. You've got almost the same equivalents in the technology area, where they're looking at a today problem rather than a much wider problem of how is this world developing? How do we get speed into this? How do we do this environmentally friendly? And how do we allow the customer to actually feel that they've got some choices here and they're actually managing the process? Because they are managing the process, but we're just not giving them the tools necessary as a completed bundle for them to do that.
Yeah, lots of puzzle pieces scattered around, but no one's brought those puzzle pieces to the market yet, or as a solution for them to do. You're right. And I think that's where that self-reflection for the operators comes in, because they can begin that process rather than just chasing the puzzle pieces all over the place. If you'll stick with that metaphor, that's a really nice thought. I love that. We've spoken at length here about the different ways operators can go. I'd love to touch on, as a great way to wrap it up, where they should not be looking, the black holes of the solutions market and of all these puzzle pieces. For the coming years, for what you see coming in trends, where is the place that operators need to just ignore and not even look at right now?
I think Amazon are great at experimenting and then saying, "Oh, look at this great idea, everybody." I'm sure they've got a strategy of distraction because they know retailers are just so single-minded about today. I think in terms of things that operators should avoid, well, let me stand back from this. Within the UK, I was an interim manager, and I ran an organisation called Home Delivery Network on the I would say the uglies and heavy side, the two-man operation. And I came to Canada being a very strong assets person, and I think it implied in this is where I'm going to go on this. And it was only recently I was talking to another guy who was running a shared, a gig economy firm, and we had it was in almost a keynote speech thing, and we were going backwards and forwards on Zoom in that forum. And it suddenly occurred to me is I can't actually get to same day. I certainly can't get to 2-hour service if I'm owning trucks, unless I have a lot of trucks. And if I'm trying to do a national service on 2 hours, and I think I've got to own trucks, that's a fault in my thinking process. So I have to find some much more flexible assets that I control, but I don't own. Mm-hmm. So the gig economy is a great outcome from that way of thinking, so that I can have lots of independent businesses, especially if it's contactless delivery to porches. I have lots of independent businesses which are motivated to do a good job. My blind spot, or the blind spot I would ask people to consider is, do you need to own your own assets? Do you need to run your own trucks if you're a retailer? And even as a third-party logistic provider, you may be brilliant at full loads and LTL or part load things, getting things around networks. But when it comes to the last mile, you may actually say, I'm going to control the delivery. I won't say the delivery routing and stuff, but I'm going to get somebody else to do this individual route and that individual route and that individual route. And they're going to I'm going to pick on people who are obviously got clean record and blah, 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 but they're motivated. I don't have to measure them in the same way as I'd have to measure my own people. Are they achieving a certain hit rate? Are they achieving a certain speed, etc.? The fact that I'm loading them up with a workload, a route, which is reasonably taxing, they will find a way of doing that. And all we need to do is make sure that they're acting in a professional manner and not taking loads of shortcuts.
Yes, of course.
Our name will not be on the livery, but it'll be on all the delivery paperwork. And we don't want to get into a situation where we've said, "Oh, you've got to do 200 drops today in this area," that comes back because they had to move through a queue of people waiting for a bus. But beyond that, don't think assets. Think more asset light, but just controlling that delivery experience.
Yeah, it all comes down to that experience, because as a consumer, like we mentioned earlier, they don't know the difference. Everything goes on behind the scenes. As long as that package arrives in one piece in good time with good service, I'll shop there again. And I think that's what it comes down to at the end of the day. No, brilliant point to end on. Really brings it full circle. This was fantastic. Gary, thank you so very much for this talk. Lots to take in. I've made lots of notes. I'm sure the audience has as well. So again, thank you so much for today. It's been brilliant.
You're very welcome. Delighted to share my thoughts.
And for you, our audience, thank you very much for joining us on this fantastic episode. Tons to digest from Gary, amazing wealth of insights. I've been taking notes like crazy all episode. Hopefully you've done the same. Again, lots to digest, but lots of action items that you can take forward to better your business, which is all we want to do here on Delivering the Goods. Of course, if you have any questions or you want to add to the conversation, you can go ahead and reach out to either of us on LinkedIn, Gary and myself, or just in the description of the video. You can reach out to us on LinkedIn there and have a conversation, ask your questions, or of course, in the comment section of this video, go ahead and leave your questions or any additional thoughts that you'd love to leave for this particular episode, be happy to have a conversation there with you. So again, thanks for joining us on this episode of Delivering the Goods, of course, written and produced by your friends here at Anyline. If you have any other things you'd like to learn about logistics, of course, logistics and last mile, visit us online at anyline.com/industries/logistics. So with that, we'll bring this episode to a delightful end. Keep delivering the goods out there, everyone. Thank you for your hard work and thank you for sticking around. We'll see you on the very next episode.
Thank you for listening today. I hope the information has been valuable for you and your team. You can connect with me via the website retail.ca and go to the contact page, or via LinkedIn by typing linkedin.com/in/last-mile. Look forward to hearing from you and playing an active part with your supply chain and your business's transformation as you start to act boldly, think big, scale, adapt, and win.